Osrc television. I am Obi Chukwemeka Oti. The imbroglio between the federal government and Academic Staff Union of Universities, Asuu, resulting in incessant strike actions in our tertiary institutions, has become a recurring decimal in our nascent democracy. Asuu is currently winding down its rollover of 2-month strike, totaling nearly 3 months of academic activities being grounded in our universities. This bout of strike commenced on February 14, 2022, over the alleged failure of the federal government to implement the agreements reached with the union in 2009. The federal government claimed it had so far paid 92 billion naira to cover earned allowances and revitalization funds to federal universities, which Asuu believes falls far short of their demands. The federal government had also agreed to inject 1.3 trillion naira for revitalization of public universities in 6 tranches, starting from 2013. It was to release 200 billion naira in 2013 and 220 billion naira each year for 5 consecutive years. It released the first tranche of 200 billion naira and failed to release the rest as agreed, citing paucity of funds. Some of the contending issues include the renegotiation of 2009 Asuu FGN agreement, improved welfare, revitalization of public universities, and replacement of universities' transparency and accountability solution UTAS with the integrated personnel payroll and information system IPPIS, among other demands. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel for the Nigerian student? Leading the conversation on the big issue today is a renowned scholar and an astute university administrator. He is currently sitting on the editorial board of over 25 national and international journals as editor, editor-in-chief, and advisory board. He is the current Vice-Chancellor, Olusegun Agagu University of Science and Technology, Okitipupa, Professor Temi Ologurisha. Welcome to the big issue.
Good to have you here.
Good. All right, so let's go straight into the focus for today. Let's start off on this note. Professor, you've been in the academia longer than the genesis of Asuu strike in Nigeria. Nigerian public universities have been short 16 times in about 20 years, with the agitations left unresolved. Why the back and forth?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think the major problem with Nigeria higher education has to do with the need for restructuring. We need to restructure higher education in Nigeria in terms of funding, in terms of governance, in terms of a whole lot of things, in terms of professionalism. When I talk of restructuring, a situation where salaries of university professors are the same in about 50 universities in Nigeria or even 100 state and federal is not acceptable. There's a need for deregulation. Education too cannot just be free. There's no need for federal government to be paying salary of over 50 universities from Abuja using PPS, as if federal government does not have another job. What federal government needs to do first is to ensure that there's a level of financial autonomy, some level, where universities can generate their own money. Give them some level of, if they require 100% funding, give them 60% or 70%, and let them generate their remaining 30%, and let them determine the salary of their professors. Professor of medicine earn the same salary as professor of Yoruba studies. I'm sorry to use Yoruba studies for instance. That is not fair. Once somebody becomes a professor, he does not profess again. He continues to earn salary. So there's a need for restructuring. There's a complete. For instance, I was in Rivers State 2 weeks ago. The vice chancellor of the state university cannot even employ or take a professor on sabbatical leave without going to Governor Wike to take permission, because it is the state government, they have their state IPPS. They pay the salary of professor in that university. That is not acceptable. Universities have been integrated as part of the civil service, and you cannot run a world-class university using that approach. So university needs some level of autonomy, financially, and in terms of governance. So a VC of the State College of the State University in Rivers State, we have to go cap in hand, begging Governor Wike before he can employ his staff. That is not acceptable. That is the truth. And the same thing with federal government. A federal university cannot take somebody on a sabbatical using the IPPS. Federal government has no business paying salary of more than 20,000 lecturers from Abuja. It's ridiculous. So unless there is restructuring, even if federal government gives, no amount of money will be enough. Let me just tell you, that's the secret. They will collect this money, suspend strike. Watch out for the language of Asuu. They always say we suspend strike. They don't call us strike. That means when the money is exhausted, they bring back the strike. So it's a cycle, because the financial is wrong. Federal government cannot continue to be in charge of everything, as if universities don't have initiatives. So we need to look at what is the acceptable norm in other climes where things are working. I've worked in the American university system for about 5 years. In fact, the so-called federal system of government we are running, there's no federal universities in America. I say it now, there's no federal university in the US. So most universities are either state or private. But what federal government does is that they give grants to selected universities. They give grants, like money. They just select some universities, they call them land grant universities. They are mostly into agriculture and some other areas. So federal government gives only grants. So there's no federal university in America. So we need to really know, what are we following? Where must higher education be centralized? As if we are running a primary school. We are not giving room for competition. Our universities are not competitive because they are centrally controlled. They are not able to attract the best hand. The best brain are not in the system. They have gone. We are not able to attract students. It is very difficult to get foreign students, foreign staff, foreign professors in our universities. Most of the universities are run by local professors, local personnel, sometimes from the local government, where the universities are located. Our universities have been reduced to a local institutions. They are not competitive. That is the truth. Because in terms of governance, you cannot even employ somebody without going to Abuja to go and beg for them to. It robs on the autonomy of the university. And so university cannot be run like civil service. And that is the major problem. Federal government, let them give money. I can tell you, in another 1 year, there will be another strike.
Okay. According to data, Minister of Labor and Employment, Chris Ngige, was quoted saying that he had successfully conciliated 1,683 industrial disputes since assumption of office in 2015, and had been taking extra measures beyond his statutory responsibilities to forestall strike actions. Do you agree with this assertion?
Well, he has right to his opinion. I don't have the capacity to actually look at what he's saying. We need to look at the cases. Any minister can come to the here to say something. So it's not my responsibility to say what he has said is correct or not. But what I know is that this strike is getting too long, and there's a need for intervention. Maybe the issue at stake is beyond him. He needs to meet with his principal and to see how this matter can be resolved. Yes.
Okay, the minister also insists that the role of the Ministry of Labor is to conciliate disputes and does not include the implementation of agreements reached with parties. What is the import of this on Asuu's struggle?
Yes, let me say something. federal government owns the federal universities. That's the truth. So, and who is the visitor to the university? Is the president of the federation. So, the Asuu agreement is beyond the Minister of Labor. That is the truth. And this agreement has been overdue. It was signed in 2009. So we are saying that the whole agreement in holistic needs to be overhauled. And what the agreement says is that it should be overhauled every 5 years or thereabout. And between 2009, although I'm not speaking for Asuu, but I'm speaking as an administrator who is an Asuu man, who understands the workings of the university. So if an agreement is due since 2014 or thereabout, and what the government has been having with Asuu is a memorandum of understanding to keep peace, I think it has got to a tipping point. For instance, let me tell you, a professor in Nigeria earns less than $1,000. That's the truth. That is the truth. So how do you attract anybody? So government is beyond federal government set up the negotiating team. So we need to, it's beyond the minister. Minister did not set it up. So it can only speak when it has to speak. I think government may need to really, the Minister of Education, the president of the country, we need to sit down and see how the matter can be resolved. So it's beyond Ngige himself. That's the truth. Because the agreement only has life when the president assents to it. That's the truth.
Okay, if you say it's beyond him and he's a part of the federal government, for instance, the federal government had on March 7, Monday, inaugurated a 7-man committee charged with the responsibility of renegotiating this 2009 agreement reached with Academic Staff Union of Universities and other university-based staff unions. But the Minister of Labor has said that he has passed the buck on Asuu, saying his ministry has made every conciliatory moves necessary to resolve this problem. But the lecturers have failed to shift ground. You have failed to shift ground. Asuu has likewise accused the federal government of insincerity, saying rather than addressing the core of the issues, the government is addressing platitudes. Are you not worried that the interest of the Nigerian students is no longer protected with this lingering strike?
Asuu is ready to go back to class or classes to teach, but like they have said, federal government needs to meet some minimum condition. If you get to our universities, you'll be sorry. I'm telling you, the facilities are not there. Our universities are local institutions. So it's not about bringing students in. That's the truth. In fact, it's very unfortunate that the masses, every time we just feel that universities should be open, we should just open the door, producing what kind of graduates? Graduates that have no skill, graduates that they carry only useless papers around. That is not what Asuu wants. Asuu is the only organization that has integrity in terms of protecting the integrity of the certificate we issue. That's the truth. When this crisis came up some years ago, they gave government some solution. And part of the solution was this ETF, Education Task Fund, which has now metamorphosed into Tertiary Education Trust Fund. But you can see what is happening. The Trust Fund now, as my hijacked, is used for other purpose. So like I've said, there's a minimum condition, which Asuu has stipulated. I think government needs to go beyond the level. Asuu is reasonable. A large number of Asuu officials, they are serving in different levels of government of this present APC-led government. So I'm very sure that Asuu will listen to them if they're able to shift ground, maybe positively towards Asuu direction. Like I've said, the IPPS, there are a lot of issues, and like I've said, Asuu came out with their alternative, what they call UTAS. So let's try that, whether it will work. That's the truth, because there are a lot of unresolved issues. IBPS was made for civil servants. So the template is quite different for academics, for universities. University is a different sector altogether. But when we begin to collapse university as if we treat them like civil service, then we have problems. And that is what Asuu is saying.
All right, let's move on. Do you think Asu's demands are outlandish? Because one of your members on this program actually opined that Asu's demands are not realistic and that the federal government only signed the MOU because they wanted you to return to work back then. What's your take on this?
I'm not. I would say Asuu demands are not realistic. For instance, like I've said, in a country where you want to attract the best hands, you are investing so much in education. The salary of a professor, for God's sake, is less than $1,000. And they are saying that we want this salary to be reviewed. They've been earning this salary in the last 15 years. Or more than 10 years. So I'm not comfortable when somebody now say the demand is unreasonable. You have IPPS, there are issues. There are professors so even some vice chancellors complain that some are even paid like graduate assistant. There are issues with the IPPS. And they're saying, Asuu is coming up with alternative. Why don't we give Asuu a trial? Whether it will work. If it doesn't work, government can throw it away. That's the truth. So it shouldn't be as if government is too rigid. Let's be flexible and try. With Asuu, government cannot meet all Asuu conditions. I must say it at this forum.
Okay.
Federal government cannot meet all conditions of Asuu.
Especially so they will look considering the fact that they have said due to paucity of funds in the country.
Exactly. But I think federal government needs to critically look at the issue of salary. Very, very important. The salary is just not attractive. That is true. It's not attractive. It's not attractive.
Okay, so if you're saying you're emphasizing a lot about salary, then perhaps some persons who have said that Asuu is being selfish. That's more about yourself, about your pockets, rather than the well-being of the tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
The 2009 agreement covers a whole lot of issues, but I just feel maybe for me as an administrator, I think the critical area which I feel touches on Asuu, as for me as an administrator, is more on the salary. Asuu may have some other demands, like I'm not Asuu spokesperson, but I'm familiar with some of the demands. Even the research facilities, like I've said, the ability of a vice chancellor. I'm a vice chancellor of a university. My governor gave me autonomy. I don't need to go to Alagbaka to meet the governor that I want to bring a sabbatical staff in the Department of Applied Geophysics. The governor has a lot of other things to do. So why does a vice chancellor need to go to Abuja or go and meet his state governor, like in River State, to get the governor's approval before he gets somebody on sabbatical? What kind of university are we running?
Okay, that's also one of the issues that the federal government has always come up with. The fact that when you're on sabbatical, you're getting paid where you are, and then your university is also still paying you your salaries.
That is the philosophy behind sabbatical. Universities all over the world, they have their peculiarities. When a professor works in a university where he works for 6 years, he's entitled to what they call sabbatical, like Saturday. You want to go and rest for 1 year. At that point, he goes to another university to get fresh ideas. Or he has a project he needs to do. Then interact with other colleagues anywhere in the world, how to do it better. It's not a year you go and sit and rest in your house and sleep. No. While your salary is still being paid, it's part of the condition of service. That is what we inherit from British system, even the American system too. So that is the way it is run. It's part of the condition of service of universities all over the world, because universities are universal.
Okay, so it's not peculiar to Nigeria alone.
It's not peculiar to Nigeria.
All right, you are the arms of affairs at a state-owned university, like you mentioned. There are critics of Asuu, particularly the state branches, have been accused of joining the Asuu strike only to solidarize with the national body. According to them, state universities have no substantial benefits from the agitations. For instance, only yesterday, Kaduna State University has asked their lecturers and students to resume academic activities.
Well, it's a very dicey thing. when the federal government negotiates with Asuu, let me say it at this forum, that Asuu is a union which is a combination of university lecturers in public, in federal and state universities. It's a union of lecturers in public universities, whether federal or state. And I think part of the agreement is that they will always negotiate centrally. And they've always been doing that with federal government. And when federal government signs agreement with that union, federal government implements immediately with federal universities. The state branches, the state university will now go back to their various states and now begin another round of negotiation with their governors, with their principal, with their governors. And some governor will say, yes, this 100% salary federal government approved, we have money, and we approve, so that the standard remains the same. Some states, governors will say, no, I can only pay 80% or 70% or 95%. That is the way it works. And so, because salary of university professors in public universities are centrally negotiated, and the union are also the same. So that is the spirit under which the state universities join federal. So it's not left for the proprietors. It is only the proprietors of state universities that can determine whether, oh, we don't want you to join federal and the central. So these are a matter of union and policy between the government, the proprietors of state universities, and their university workers.
But don't you think this is an injustice to taxpayers who have actually paid their taxes in their various states and their children are locked out of school?
Yeah, I think the stakeholders may need to maybe have another stakeholders meeting to look at the fallout of what happens, to look at the memorandum of understanding between the state governor, the proprietors of state universities, and the lecturers, and even the students. What should be the terms of reference? But for now, that is what is in operation. I don't want to say yes or no, but I think the matter may need to be revisited. Yeah.
All right. The instability in our higher institutions has also caused image problem for the nation. In some years, back in the years, like you mentioned earlier, Nigerian universities could boast of an array of international students. But these days, it's no longer the same. Rather, Nigerians are the ones migrating to foreign universities to get quality education. Has these strike actions in Nigerian university mended the problems or worsened it?
Yeah, the strike is not good for us. It's not creating a good image for Nigeria, and it's making it difficult for Nigerian universities to attract students, because there's no point as a foreign student you are paying in dollars. They're not going to pay in naira. You pay in dollars, and you come over here, and instead of 4 years, you spend 6 years, 7 years because of local issues. The story will not be good. The foreign student will go back and tell it different stories. That's the truth. So I think the strike is not good for our education. It's not making our educational system to be competitive. It's robbing on the integrity in terms of quality and in terms of access. We're not getting foreign students. We're not even saying that we should get students from UK or from America. Nigerian universities should be able to attract students from Ghana, from Togo, from Cameroon. What is happening now is that Nigerians are drifting in large number to Lome, to Togo, to Ghana. Those universities that are very, very substandard, even to Nigerian ones. So the strike is giving us a bad image. So, but I feel that we should address what is causing strike. Like I've said, the university system needs to be restructured in terms of governance, in terms of autonomy, financial autonomy. They've given Asuu political autonomy in terms of the ability of council to appoint vice chancellors. But they should grant some level of financial autonomy, especially to federal universities, for them to charge a little fee, however small, and that will help government. Because the whole load right now is on top of federal government. And no government cannot provide everything. Let parents, let them pay some stipends, however small, whether 50,000 or whatever, they must pay.
Are you saying that they're not paying at the moment?
There are no federal university, there's no tuition fees. There are other fees like medical, ICT, library. These are small charges. There are no tuition fees in federal universities, only in state universities.
Okay, and this to you, this tuition fee should be paid to the school, not the federal government.
Exactly. And that is why federal government needs to look at what does it take to run a university per child, and then multiply by the number of students in a university. You have an average cost of what it takes to run to provide university education in a particular university. And federal government can now say, oh, we are giving you permission to charge 50,000, but instead of 100% financial support we give you, henceforth, now that you charge 50%, 50,000, we'll give you 70 or 80% and use the 50% you charge to augment. And the load will be whole federal government. And federal government can have time to attend to other issues.
But don't you think that that would also make it more difficult as an increase and aggravate the issue of illiteracy amongst us as a people?
I don't think so. If you look at what is happening now, state universities, for instance, they charge fees, and they are running in Osrc State University.
We know also that the common man, many are not able to afford these fees being charged by state and private universities.
The truth is this: university education is not for everybody. I don't know why we just feel that everybody must go to the university. That's the truth. University education is not for everybody. That's the truth. Primary up to secondary school, they are free in all developed countries of the world. In America, you don't pay any fees in primary schools and secondary schools. But when you are going to university, you have to pay some money. In America, they have what they call loan schemes, what they call federal aid. They give an undergraduate student 5,000 free. If you want to get more than 5,000, you have to take a loan, which you have to pay back. And the American security system is different from ours. In America, it's just like a student in the university. You have a matric number. So there's a social security number. Anywhere you work, you are owing the federal government so amount of money. And they tell you, how do you want to repay the loan? So, and the loans are not collateralized. They are in trillions, and they are revolving for generations and generations of Americans who are residents or citizens. So, but here, we don't have such schemes. So, because the social security system is not there, there are no strong institutions to enforce such things. I'm aware in the past, federal government tried some loans board, but it never worked because there was no institutional framework, legal framework to make it work. And maybe with the national NIM, this identity card, something, whether it will work. But these are the challenges. In America, there's a loan scheme where students can take loan and go to school. And they also, federal government also gives something like similar to our own bursary. That one is minimum of 5,000 students for undergraduates. It's just a free money to them, to help them to augment their fees, their whatever upkeep. Yeah. So we don't have such program here. So maybe the federal government may need to look at that kind of program. But like I've said, university education is not for everybody.
Okay. All right. What do you foresee happening as the rollover given by Asuu winds down? Can we handle another rollover of the strike? These students have been at home for almost 3 months at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's just keep praying that things will work out, and the negotiating team and Asuu, they'll be able to reach a midpoint, and federal government, who is the final arbiter, the president. I know during the Goodluck Jonathan era, there was a stalemate to the point that Asuu was invited to the villa to meet with Goodluck, President Goodluck. And it was President Goodluck that eventually broke up peace. So maybe it will get to that point, because President Buhari is our father. He's a father to everybody. So I'm sure he's watching what is happening. So it will get to a point, he will call everybody to order. And I'm sure sanity will eventually return to the universities. And we can start teaching and doing our research.
Revered University Administrator and Vice Chancellor Olusegun Agagu University of Science and Technology, Okitipupa, Professor Temi Ologunorisha. Thank you for sharing your perspectives with me on the big issue.
Thank you so much for having you around.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go take the news update. I will return with the panelists to open up the conversation. Do join us again.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on the news update. Oluwatoyin Omodara is my name. The Nigeria Union of Journalists, NUJ, Ondo State Council, has called on the State Ministry of Infrastructure, Lands and Housing to pay special attention to the completion of ongoing road projects and rehabilitation of feeder roads within Akure metropolis as the rainy season returns. In a communique issued after its monthly Congress, Ondo NUJ, while acknowledging the giant strides of the state government in roads construction, called on the Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, to mobilize contractors to urgently attend to the deplorable Akure-Ado-Ekiti Road. The NUJ meeting, presided over by the chairman, Leke Adegbite, charged governors Kaode Fayemi and Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, as well as the National Assembly members from the two states, to mount pressure on the federal government to fix the Akure-Ado-Ekiti Road in the interest of the people who suffer on the highway daily. Felicitating workers on the occasion of this year's May Day celebration, the union urged government to give top priority to security of all and devise better economic strategies to enable various state governments pay their workers' salaries as at and when due. The communique also tasked security operatives to monitor increasing activities of scavengers at neighborhoods in Ondo State, especially in Akure, as they now constitute security threat to many residents. Ahead of the 2023 general elections, the Northern Elders Forum, NEF, has faulted the zoning of the presidency, saying it negates the standard norms of democracy. The NEF convener, Professor Ango Abdullahi, said this during a meeting with the coalition of northern groups in Zaria, Kaduna State. Abdullahi said political parties should allow their members freely vote for candidates of their choice. He said the power-sharing deal between the northern and southern regions of Nigeria is dead and buried, insisting that candidates should be allowed to contest elections on the basis of merit and their competence. The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Abdullahi Adamu, says the party does not regret pegging its presidential nomination form at 100 million naira. He said these after presenting the Ekiti APC governorship candidate Abiodun Oyebanji to President Muhammadu Buhari. Adamu explained that the move was to ward off on serious contenders and raise sufficient funds ahead of the upcoming elections. Aside from this, the APC leader also said the party has not yet taken a decision on the zoning of its presidential candidate for the 2023 election. According to him, the decision on which part of the country should produce the party's flag bearer was beyond him. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has commenced the screening of the 17 presidential aspirants at the Legacy House in Abuja. The exercise, which is happening behind closed doors, is headed by the former Senate President David Mark. In attendance is the Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, former Senate President Ayim Pius Ayim, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Senate President Bukola Saraki, former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi, amongst other aspirants. One of the aspirants, Ayim Pius Ayim, who has been screened, said the process is a simple one. According to him, all the panel is out for is to verify their membership status, financial status, academic credentials, and other requirements for a presidential candidate as spelled out in the Constitution. And that's it on the news updates. Join us by 7 for a comprehensive news report. The big issue continues in a jiffy. Please stay with us.
You know, Nigeria, we are very good at talking, but we're not good at acting. If we act the way we talk, Nigeria will be has done X or Z. What has he done? In how many universities today do you have that can attract students from outside the country, that can start lecturers from outside the country? You see, during his tenure, Nigerian universities have been reduced to nothing. As far as we are concerned, the UTAS we have produced have passed through all the tests that are needed to apply it, which they didn't apply to IPs. We challenged them to one day. We are challenging the NIDA to come. Well, let us do open demonstration of UTAS and let them hack into it in the presence of all the journalists in Nigeria. And the report by the head of service showed that more than the 3,000 or so people have been from the back integrated into the IPs. The report by the Auditor General showed that it's a complete scam. But we are insisting on it, and we are paying so much every year for that program that we could do. Do we need to, do a country like Nigeria with our brains, need to go outside the country to go and borrow a procedure to pay salary?
You're welcome back to the panel session of The Big Issue. And our focus is the lingering Asuu strike in tertiary institutions in Nigeria. I'm being joined now by Dr. Gbenga Abimbola, University Don and journalist. Thank you for coming once again on The Big Issue.
It is my pleasure.
And I also have with me Mr. Babatope Okowe, a social affairs commentator and a journalist.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'll start with you, Dr. Abimbola. One of the key things that our lead discussant, Professor Olugunrisha, said is the fact that there is need for restructuring in our university system. What's your take on that?
I agree with him. I can't agree less. And that is why I may be termed an apostle of restructuring.
You felt like you were speaking your mind.
Yes, it's beyond even the university. What is happening in Nigerian universities today is symptomatic of the warped structure of the country.
The Nigerian system.
Of the Nigerian system. You know, I mentioned it in one of the editions of this program, that somebody, a high court judge in Zugeru, a high court judge in Brinikebi, is earning the same salary with a high court judge in Lagos or Port Harcourt. That is the problem of this country. It is not done anywhere. We are not practicing federalism. In the United States, where we are saying we are copying them, they have 51 constitutions. The federal constitution and the constitution of each state, making 51. And there is nothing like uniform salary for anybody. But until we restructure Nigeria, if we are still running this unitary system that we call federal, we cannot have good universities. That's number one. Now, if we are saying we should restructure the university system, what is the problem with the structure? Professor Olugunrisha has mentioned the issue of salary. He has mentioned the issue of funding. But beyond them, we also have other things wrong with our structure. Okay. The federal government cannot continue, even the state governments. Everything is warped. Everything is defective. In most federal and state universities, which are public universities, if they were private, can they run it like that? Now, any university, any in a senior climb, you have more of academic staff to non-academic. Because what you are producing primarily is knowledge. Now, in a situation where in federal universities and state universities, the ratio of the academic to non-academic is too wide, that gap. If you have 5 lecturers, you are going to have 50 SANU and NASU members. Whereas in any universities abroad, and the private university should be the case, you now have a lecturer teaching 200 students, and you have more non-academic staff. What are they doing? So you cannot, that is why it's a fraud. I call Nigerian university system, a fraud, because the students are not really benefiting what they should benefit, because the structure is 40. You can't expect a professor to, one professor to 200 students, and you want him to be able to know them, and want you to be able to supervise them. Nobody is bereft, nobody is daft. Anybody who is admitted into the university, we have, in education, we talk about the genius, we talk about fast learners, we talk about low learners and average learners. But if there are not many, if there are no more than 15 or 20 to you in a class, you'll be able to devote attention to each of them based on their capacities. But today we do mass production. And that's why you now heap the blames on the lecturers that they are producing half-baked or people who are unemployable. The process. If it is your own business, you won't employ 10,000 non-academic staff and employ only 500 academic staff. That is part of the structure that we are talking about. And my own take is that until the federal government, how can we have NUC? NUC is like a master. Controlling is like an emperor. It's as if NUC is designing syllabus, designing curriculum. It is not done in the US. Each university has its own autonomy to design its own curriculum, but we have a uniform curriculum in Nigeria. That if you want to teach mass comm now, what you are doing in mass comm in Akumba is the same thing that you do in Kano. It's not done anywhere. So each university should be able to come up with its own innovation and ingenuity. It is then we talk about competition. Now there is nothing like competition because everything is uniform. Just like Nigeria, we also do a uniform government. That is the problem.
All right, I'll come to you now, Mr. Babatokbakawo. He said something about the fact that Nigeria's education system, as well as you agreed, is really, really warped. There's a lot that is wrong at the moment. As a journalist, do you think that the media has done enough, to bring this issue to the center stage? Because it seems like we are not really setting agenda. This Asuu strike has been going on for like 3 months now. Almost 3 months, and then we don't know if there will be another rollover after this one. What do you think? Do you think the media has done enough?
I would say that the media is the reflection of the society. Let me say that there's no newspaper that does not have education page that at least comes out every week, and we have about 15 national dailies. Apart from the fact that there are education-related stories that come out every day. If media reports, what is left is for the people that are concerned to really take heed and make amend. Take, for instance, all what Professor Logan has said, very good. But do we have society that understands what the man actually said? For instance, is the issue of payments of stipend by parents. Some people will say, but they went to free university in their own period, and now they want students to pay. So there are a lot of things that the society needs to do. We need active society. We need active civil organizations that will come up and protest this systematic strike. You have a child that got admission to university, say at 18. At 20, he's still in part 1. So, and when he wants to get job, you say 23.
You peg it
at 23. So how will he not now doctor the age in order to get a job? So we have a lot of problems. And once the media put it into the front burner, it is now left for the society to take it off from there.
That's what I'm asking you. Now you've talked about the civil society is coming out to protest what is going
on. Yes,
on.
and I mean, the society.
Now,
I'm saying that I've said it earlier, that in every newspaper, I work with a newspaper, every newspaper has education page that comes out at least once.
Not even a page, pages.
Pages, I mean, education section that comes out every week, every newspaper in Nigeria. Then all the broadcast stations also have
education
programs where all these things are brought into. So it is now left for the society to take it off from there. There was a time I featured in one of these programs here, and we asked similar question. A civil organization person was brought as co-panelist, and I told him that why is it that in the past, once you see an event that was reported that is abnormal, people are enraged, people take protest, people go on the street, but now everybody's like docile, expecting the next breaking story. and we forget the other one. Now we are talking about Asuu strike. When it started, it was always in the front pages of the newspapers. Now they are no longer talking about it because we have since then there have been train hijack, we have been Boko Haram insurgents, there have been kidnappings here and there. Then the politics are cropped in again, and people are talking about 2023, forgetting all those things that are supposed to be something that people are supposed to be talking about.
You still bring me back. Who are those that are supposed to be setting agenda? You're a journalist.
I said that media had done their bits. I said it is now left for the society to take it up from there.
You also said that when it started, the strike now,
Yes.
in February, it was taking the first pages.
Yes.
And then now it's as if we've moved on to other issues.
That's what I'm saying.
And then the society as well keeps moving on to other issues.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Well, if I may come in, what he's trying to say is that we can't blame the media for this. Remember that the media themselves, they are in business. And they must serve what the audience want. Otherwise, they will close their shops. Who is paying? For a newspaper, who is going to buy the newsprint? Who is going to pay salaries? If you say it is Asuu strike, education, you are going to be leading your story, your page, your newspaper with every day. Nobody buys it. We are talking about Naira nomination form, and you close your eyes to it because there is Asuu strike. We are talking of somebody of these political calculations, permutations and non-permutations, and you say you close your eyes to it. The society,
at the expense of education.
Yes, at the expense of education. The real thing is that we have a government that doesn't care. The government that doesn't listen. In any sane climb, the government of the day would have even resigned. Even when we talk about Kaduna, what happened in Kaduna is in quick successions. Is that not more deadly than even the Asuu strike? That you see in broad daylight, that in fact, only yesterday now, they showed the pictures of those who are still in captivity. And yet government feels unconcerned. The only thing government does is to condemn attacks after scores of people had been killed. That condemnation statement, does it revive them? That is the problem. And that takes us to the issue of this structure we are talking about. The federal structure we are running cannot give us any good thing.
Let me just add that Asuu is on strike. Minister of Education, Wajuba,
was the first to pay 100 million.
And Asuu is on strike, and nobody is talking.
And the Minister of Labour is also in the race.
So what are we talking about?
A Minister of Transport as well.
Again, we are even talking about
education instead.
Because this thing concerns the Minister of Labour and the Minister of Education. Now, when Professor Ologunrisha was talking, because you asked him about this strike, truly, I am a lecturer. I'm a journalist. I'm also a lecturer. But I know that strike is not a desirable thing at all. Now, in any sane society, if any union goes on strike for 1 week, government will shake. Now, Asuu gave government 1 month. Government just called a meeting once. And when Asuu now gave 2 more months, government is not even calling anything. It shows that we have a government that doesn't care. Now, I want to say something about strike. Because sometimes I sat down. I began to say that before I became an undergraduate, Asuu had been going on strike. But I recall that when I entered the University of Ibadan in the 90s, early 90s, as an undergraduate, I spent 2 years for one session. And when we resumed, after the strike, the University of Ibadan cancelled that session and said we should begin again because they didn't want to produce half-baked graduates.
It happened also in the university I went to.
So
I got admission 1991. I left 1997.
Can you? So now.
Studying mass communication.
No,
something
else. So now, what do I want to bring out from here? As at that time, I know that in every department at UI, in my own department, in communication department, I had Ghanaians, I had Cameroonians. In my every set, you will have people from Asia, from Middle East, and from neighboring African countries. I can mention the names of those of my mates. There was no GSM that time, so most of them we've lost contact. Now we are talking about international students. So you see that it is really a universal place. Today, if you go to most of the state universities, 90% of the students, they are from that state. It shows that we are not attracting. Now, I now begin to say that if there were no strike, what would our universities have been? The truth is that strikes have reduced our image. But if there were no strikes, it would have been worse. I will tell you how. It would have been worse. Now, do you know that before now, in the 50 years ago, 40 years ago, public secondary schools, even in those days, when you talk about Oyemekun, Aquinas, Fiwashaye, St. Louis, everybody wanted to send his or her children to those schools. They were public schools when they took it over from the missions, and they were they were held in high esteem. Today, who will send his child to Oyemekun and leave some private secondary schools? Because government, the ruling class, politicians, they know what they are doing. What they did to public secondary schools was what they wanted to do to the universities. That is what Asuu. In fact, I'm not even talking as a member of Asuu. I'm talking as an analyst who knows what is happening. In fact, as a member of Asuu, if you want me to talk, I will say that my union is not even fighting for my welfare. Because most of the strike that Asuu had embarked upon was for the funding for the university. Even salary comes last. And that is why in my own university now, where I teach, you will see that most of the projects there, they were federal government intervention. And I teach in a state university. Without Asuu strike, would that have happened? Some universities would have been like glorified secondary schools. But what I even say is that it is still wrong. We don't need to have a uniform system. Now, in fact, I said most of the public universities in Nigeria, they are a fraud because government is wasting resources. Where you are supposed to have 2 supporting staff who are not lecturers, you have 50, you have 20. And where you are supposed to have 20 lecturers, you have only 2. So you can see wasting resources. So everything is warped. So what we are saying here is that for this Asuu strike, it's not only Asuu that is on strike now. Even all the unions, they are on strike. And my take is that you are on strike. Is the government even listening? So even if you go back to the classroom, just like Professor Logunrucha said, the problem still remains. How can you insist that all the universities in Nigeria, federal universities, they will collect their salary from Abuja through IPPIS? And you say that you want to have healthy competition? It cannot work. Just like Professor Logunrucha said, many professors are not professing anything again. And even if you look at the reward system in the university system in Nigeria, it gives room for laziness. If you are a lecturer who works assiduously, you are hardworking, you give attention to your students, you give attention to your work, you make sure and you are engaged in community development, nobody promotes you on that basis. So you are only promoted based on journal articles that you publish. And some lecturers can devote their time to for publishing, and they will leave their students unattended to, and they will still get promoted. That's why I say everything is warped. So the students are the receiving end. And if we really want to do something about our educational system, we have to look at it and restructure. We are talking about the universities. It's not only the university that is a tertiary institution, but the way we have done it now in Nigeria, our economy is certificate driven. Everybody wants to get a university degree. University is not meant for everybody. That is the truth. Even in the advanced countries, where the loans are available for you to take, not everybody goes to the university. There are other colleges. There are other, like our polytechnic, monotechnics, technical colleges, we are destroying them. Nobody is establishing any private college of education now. Private polytechnic, everybody is establishing either private or public. Some governors, they are establishing universities as if it is their constituency projects. You have one state having 4 or 5 universities, and yet they depend on Asuu strike for the federal government intervention to come through TED fund. Everything is warped.
All right, let me come to you, Mr. Okeowo. Chris Ngige, talking about Senator Chris Ngige, the Labor and Employment Minister, actually praised himself, saying that he's been successful as a labor and employment. He has actually conciliated 1,683 industrial disputes since assumption of office across board since 2015. What do you make of that?
Let me just say that you cannot be a judge in your own case. It is the people that will judge him, whether he has done credibly well or otherwise. But let us look at it. If you are wearing white and there's a stain there, just a drop of oil, people will
They will look at. They won't even see the white again. It's that one.
They will see that stain. So if he has done, assuming without considering that he has done creditably well, that this Asuu strike and crisis in the education system had actually made has rubbished his so-called achievements.
But do you believe, like Professor Ologun-Orisha said, that it's actually beyond him, the state we're in at the moment?
You see, let me just say that you cannot be a king and still be begging. I don't know how to say it properly. You are a king, and you are still begging
you are apologetic.
Apologetic? No.
To your subjects.
To your subjects? No. You are being appointed as the eyes and ears of the president. You are an appointee of the president. So why should you not make proper representation to the appropriate quarters? Yes, we have Minister of Education, we have Minister of Labour and Employment, but what it does principally is about labour. The two of you cannot synergize, meet with the president, and settle the crisis that is, or the crisis that is driving this education system. What does it take to settle this thing? Listen to what these lecturers are saying, and let them settle them once and for all. But to me too, if I were to be Asuu members, I would just say, okay, in the interest of the students, let us, because it's like this government we have at the federal level is deaf and dumb, and they are not ready to listen to anybody again. What is in their mind now is how to just exit this government next year. So they are not bothered. That's why, like Dr. Abibola said, when they called for strike 3 months ago, in 1 month they had one meeting. Now they rolled it over additional 2 months, and they have not called any meeting as we speak.
But they said they set up the committee, the BRICS committee.
They are buying time. Please let me come in. Just like my colleague said, when you say it is beyond Ikike, it's not beyond him. Now, with due respect to Professor Ologun-Orisha, why I say it's not beyond him is this: any agreement, before any agreement is concretized, both parties will go to their principals. Asuu will go back to all his branches and members. Then the ministers and the government officials, that is both the permanent and whatever, they will also go back to the Federal Executive Council, to the president, and get the commitment. Now, my take is that Nigeria, just like my brother said, how come that, where are the civil societies? It is not the first time. Jonathan's government did it, and Jonathan made some commitment. He released some money to back up that commitment. I said that 220 million every year will be released for 5 years so that they will be able to do one thing or the other. This government came, and government said, no, it is not our government that did it. We don't have the capacity. We didn't have this money. Asuu said, okay, agreed. People will be saying that Asuu is not shifting grant. I don't want to believe. Asuu said, okay, we agreed. And they read a memorandum of understanding that let us share weight. We cannot do all these things. Let me tell you, if not for Asuu, that's what I'm talking about. Some universities will not have any laboratory. Some will not have any library. Now, we the parents, what we just want is that let our children go through the university, whether they acquire any skill or not, let them graduate in record time. And what are they graduating with? They can't compete globally. Now, this government said, let's read a memorandum of understanding, and Asuu signed memorandum of understanding with them that now, based on all these issues that Jonathan government said, we can't do it. If it's only 1/4 or only 10%, they reach memorandum of understanding. I was still an Asuu ESCO that time at my branch. Do you know that government didn't do anything? After 1 year, Asuu went back, and government said, okay, let's come back. Even that memorandum of understanding we read with you. How can a government say that all these things we can't, this is the one we can do, and government failed to do, and you say morally government is right? No. Now, after 1 year, government now came and said, we can't do again. And Asuu said, okay, what can you now do? And they agreed. Asuu now said, we don't want memorandum of understanding, we want memorandum of action. That we enough of understanding, enough of agreement. And government said, okay, this is what we can do. And they agreed on memorandum of action. And Asuu suspended strike. Up to now, they've not done anything. So it shows that, do you think that it's only Igige and the ministers of education that signed that agreement on behalf of government? No. Would Buhari not have endorsed it before they signed all those agreements? So if ministers, for that matter, on behalf of federal government, if they enter into agreement with any union, what of doctors? We are talking about Asuu here now. What of doctors? And yes, you know you cannot implement it. How can you sign an agreement you know you cannot implement?
Well, just because they want you to return to
that
work.
That is insincerity. They just want to. It shows that that government is responsible. So you just want him. That is deceit.
Do you think
you are deceiving?
Your requests are also outlandish and unrealistic.
If it is outlandish in the eye of the government, that is why government will say, "Let us negotiate and renegotiate." We are talking about renegotiation. What are you talking? This is renegotiation now. Our government knows within his mind that it cannot achieve this. Our government signs.
Let me just
and you are saying the government is justified.
But now they've also said, okay,
no, sorry, is government doing it under duress?
They set up the BRICS committee as well to renegotiate.
Well, I'm no longer an Asuu official, and I cannot speak on behalf of the union, but I know that government uses committees to buy time. All those agreements that they procured, a memorandum of understanding, memorandum of action, they set up committee now, and this committee is set up at the instance of government, not in the instance of the union, and they will all do a negotiation because this thing, when you talk about labor relations, nobody can say that I must have my way, whether the employer or the employee. That is what they call. They must come to the middle point. They must shift grants. Asuu will have shifted grant. Government will have shifted grant before they arrive at any agreement or whatever.
But
and yet government will remain.
That Asuu is not shifting ground. That it behoves on Asuu.
Let him come out, please. Let Ngige come out. Excuse me. Let Ngige come out and say that all these demands that we have failed in 7 years, now that we have come together, these are the ones we have done now in the last 2 months or 3 months of this strike. Let Ngige come and talk about that. Please, this issue of IPPIS, let me just single that one out.
Okay.
That one has nothing to do with government bringing money now. Government is paying salaries. But say, the IPPIS you are using cannot attract foreigners, cannot attract other people to come and do sabbatical with us. Let us do something. They say provide alternative. You know, it was military government that said we cannot have money, we don't have money. Asuu gave them ETF option. And ETF have metamorphosed into TED fund. This TED fund now, they don't use for university again. They use it for university and all schools where government is sitting, government officials are siphoning funds. And Asuu now said,
allegation.
Yes, we know what we are talking about now. And Asuu is now saying, okay, we have an alternative platform that you can use. You are the one that can pay salary. We are not saying that they take UTAS. Our government began to do back and forth for more than 4 years now. Our government I finally said we set up we are conducting integrity tests. That took government more than 1 year. And after the result came out, they say the technical test came up almost 80-something%. Even if you have 60% or 70%, is that not a pass mark? Our government still say you cannot use it. And you say this government is sincere. I'm not even talking on behalf of us. I'm talking as a parent. I also have my children in Nigerian university, public. I'm also facing it. Forget that I'm a teacher in the university. I'm also a parent. I feel it. But what I'm saying is that we have, just like my brother said, for me, if I am to talk as a person, I would say that the union should have studied to have known that this government is not ready to listen. So maybe, because people will begin to say that Asuu is only using strike. What other options? When Asuu is writing letters, when Asuu is doing lobbying, visiting government, visiting people to help them talk to government, nobody will say Asuu is working. When Asuu is doing
press, yes, got involved with
yes,
religious leaders.
Yes, religious that Asuu will do that. Nobody is talking. When Asuu goes to government to begin to send, sometimes within 3 months, Asuu will send 50 letters to government. Government will not reply anyone because the government itself knows that they will not sneeze if Asuu coughs until there is a strike. It shows that our system is warped. Now, the question we should ask is this: how many of these government officials have their children in public universities? What they want to do, they want to kill public universities so that the private universities will begin to prosper. And that they did that successfully to public primary and secondary schools. So, you know, today now, it is only the poor that send their children to the to government public and primary and secondary schools. because private people have
Even
invested.
poor people will even send their
Children to private nursery schools.
Yes, it will not be
the standard.
Yes,
Yes.
Even if it is with planks.
Yes.
If the,
Where they don't even have enough teachers,
All the
they will still send their
private
children
there.
because government has disoriented Nigerians that private they want to do it with the universities now, to the effect that when the public universities are destroyed, then parents will have no choice than to send their children to private universities, and that one will be more deadly because majority of parents will not be able to afford, as many people will drop out of university education. Okay. Now Nigerians are not talking; they are not seeing it in that light.
Let me come back to Babata Bako. You know, any country that wishes its nation well, as in wishes to have a great future, wishes to thrive, must invest in education. What seems to be going on with our education sector from cradle to even adulthood? Talking about the tertiary institution now, it seems as if there's no political will. There's no. Some have argued that it's as if there's this effort to make sure that people are perpetually illiterate. Do you agree?
I don't think, because illiterates, or if there is an effort, if it's a state policy to make people illiterate, I don't think no government will do that. I think what they are doing is like inadvertently doing some things that are wrong. Take for instance, we are talking about primary and secondary education, which is compulsory. Basic education is free and compulsory. But unfortunately, it's supposed to be free because public primary schools and public secondary schools are free.
Yes.
But people will now decide on their own and send their children to fee-paying school. Mm-hmm. That means they have slept on that their particular rights, and government is not subsidizing private universities. All efforts, even these private universities we are talking about, their proprietors, the VCs, the owners have cried to the government that they want to benefit from intervention. But the government said no, because it's a private venture, it's a private business. But they now said they pay taxes just like other individuals. So what I'm saying is that our people must make sure that institutions, government institutions work. Primary schools, I went to St. Vedan's primary school here, and from there to Adu Memorial Secondary School, from there to public university.
I'm proud to say I went
So,
to public universities, public primary school.
Yes,
I went through all my life.
Yes, but now,
and some of us are even better off than those who went through private schools.
Can we trust our public institutions? I think the first time that people started losing faith in the primary education was when the governments at the lower level, that is, the local governments, were unable to pay teachers' salary, the primary school teachers, and they were on strike for 1 year, 2 years, because there was zero allocation to local government. So people now left the primary schools and took
the public primary schools.
Yes. The same thing, secondary schools. Some secondary school teachers have not been paid for some months, and that means to affect their performances in the classroom. So now both primary and secondary schools have been destroyed for private ones, because owners of private school will not allow you not to work. They will be on your neck, giving you task over task. But if you are not paying somebody at 20, what happens? And that was why, that was what the government saw, or the state government saw, that, okay, let us give these schools to the original owners, the faith-based, so that at least they can still assist government in bringing up these institutions to a particular level. But if you don't do that, I'm sorry, if you don't do that, if we don't have more investment in education, we'll be producing not illiterate, but half-baked graduates, half-baked people that you see that they cannot do anything. They will just go through the schools
unemployable,
unemployable, yes.
All right, let's come to this issue of state universities being involved in Asuu strikes. Do you think there's any moral justification for it?
There is, but even that moral justification is also predicated on this WAP system. I've addressed it. The system is warped. In fact, it doesn't stand to reason that the federal government will be negotiating. Asuu will be negotiating with the federal government, and you will want the state governments to implement. You understand? That is, does it stand to reason? For example, is a representative of all the governors. Were they at that negotiation? And that is why after the federal government has acceded, state universities will now begin to negotiate again and begin to agitate, not even agitate. Now, but you will now even with that, we are talking about their own benefit, their own salary. But for states, the moral justification there is that the state universities, they are benefiting from the Asuu strike, but the lecturers there may not benefit directly. How do I mean? Let me use my university for example. I teach at Adekunle Ajayi University. In fact, from 2014, the last time the state government, all the administrations, the last time they had capital project, capital votes, I think it was 2014. The immediate past government, it was only one project that it executed in its 8-year tenure. All other projects, they were executed by TED Fund. Now, TED Fund is owned by the federal government. You understand? So, now is our university fund, run by federal government? Was it established by the federal government? Why should we begin to benefit? Laboratories in our university, lecture halls, lecture theaters, even staff who are going on training, whether home or overseas, TED Fund, they still draw from it. And we are staff of a university owned by state. So when people don't understand it, they just believe that strike is only about salary. That once the strike is over, the federal government will give the allowance to their employees, and the state, lecturers at the state university. What are you benefiting? The system is benefiting. The lecturers may not benefit. But even with that, I'm saying that it's not still correct. We have over-centralized everything.
Okay.
If we have not over-centralized everything. There's one thing I want to say. There was a time that the government proposed that labor should be removed from exclusive to concurrent list. Who were the people that kicked against it? They were the labor leaders. Why? Because they wanted
uniform salary structure.
Are you getting it? Somebody working in Samfara.
In Guzo.
Or
Kaura Namoda there. Who want to earn something from somebody in Warri.
Or somebody in Lagos. That even the cost of transport alone. Or somebody in Abuja, the cost of accommodation has already taken the year's salary. I think it is wrong. I think it is high time.
When you say labor kicked against it, labor also represents these workers across
the world. That's
what
I'm saying. That is like we don't even really know what we want as a people. Are you getting it? Okay, if now take for instance, the federal government lecturers agreed and say, okay, call off the strike. The state Asuu members start to negotiate. They will
start to agitate.
They still want the same thing with the federal government. They will say, after all, we are going to the same market. So I think as a people, we don't really know what we want. We want restructuring and we want unity at the other side. So that is my take about this.
Babadokwe, please, you cannot say we want restructuring in one hand, we want unity in another hand. I think it is the fault of the ruling class. Let us face the fact. In the First Republic, this was not so. In the First Republic, the University of Ife was established by the Western government, and it was the best in terms of architectural design those days. You understand? Before the federal government took over everything. The first television station in Nigeria was established and run by the Western government, which is now NTA, but the federal government took it by force. What are we talking about? What we are talking about here is that less restructuring it's not only about education. We should not single out anything. We should talk about holistic. Let us go back to what we were practicing before. If we have true federalism, all these agitations will stop. It will now be, if it is a state by state or region by region, you will now have healthy competition. You cannot be a civil servant. Even what of civil servants? There is what they call it a minimum salary scale, the minimum wage. They still want the same thing, just like you said, for all the states. But if we know that there is no free money that governors are going to collect in Abuja every month, nobody will agitate and say, I want to collect the same salary with somebody in Abuja. It is because of this WAP system. If we have true federal system, please, it may interest you that the federal government is even legislating on primary education.
They have you back.
They have you back. It is an aberration. And we say it's the federal government. Federal government is even legislating on primary health care. So these are the issues we are talking about. So federal government, now the roads, in Ondo State, almost, in fact, about 60% of the major roads in Ondo State, they are federal government roads. And federal government, the Minister of Housing, the Minister of War does not even know the number of roads federal government has, not to talk about knowing where they are. And yet federal government is not fixing any road here. So it is because of this WAP system. Federal government should share the weight. And that's what we are talking about. And if we say restructuring, we are talking about both physical and political restructuring.
This will include devolution of power.
Of course.
Then the rejig of the money at the allocation.
No, please. I'm even talking that we shouldn't be talking about. It's an aberration that when we talk about a federal government, we talk about allocation. It's not done. What we should be talking about is that each region or state should control its resources and send percentage as tax to the federal.
Exactly.
Please, in the First Republic, let me shock you. The First Republic, the party that formed the government, that the lead partner, that was MPC, Northern People's Congress. The leader of that party chose not to leave his region, his state, northern region, to come to federal capital to rule over Nigeria. He sent his protege, Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Ahmadu Bello, the leader of the party, he preferred to be at his region and serve his people at that point. Because that time, regions were very powerful. Each state, they controlled their resources. There was no way at that time. You understand? So if we have that one, nobody, Abuja is the headquarters of corruption. And that's why senators and everybody wants to go to Abuja. So let us devolve powers and decentralize and go to true federalism. Nobody, there won't be anything like a federal university, federal polytechnic, federal this, federal that. Federal government is legislating on primary and secondary.
I know the worst part of it. Let me just say before. What part of it is that many people are now agitating that they want federal government institutions in their communities.
Yes, in every local government, almost every local government now.
All right, Professor Ologunrisha also expressed optimism that he believes that in no distant time, perhaps before this rollover ends, in a couple of weeks, I think about 2 weeks now, we're in the 10th week already.
2 weeks,
yes, we're already in the 10th week.
By next week, it should be,
so he's expressing optimism that before then, he believes that President Muhammadu Buhari will actually step in and bring sanity to this issue.
Just let us pray and hope. Because the way it is, like I said,
seem to have lost hope, Dr. Abimbola.
No,
it's the reality now.
Because, like I said, if all the language you listen to is right, I think it is bad.
It's very bad.
And before, I was having hope that when they said they want to set up this committee, I thought something was going to come up. But having waited for a full month, I didn't hear anything. I was going through all the newspapers. I was Googling all channels, listening to all, thinking that there would have been concrete arrangement or something that would give hope to people. But since then, I've not heard anything. What we are hearing is silence from both sides. Maybe they are working underground, we don't know. But I think
sorry, my brother, let me even show. Do you know that for over 1 month now, the entire university system in Nigeria has been paralyzed? The implication is that we are talking of Asuu. What of NASU? What of SANU? The only kind of people that are working in the university are the security men now. So even you that you graduated 10 years ago, 2 years ago, last year, you want to collect transcript? Nothing. You want to collect your certificate? Nothing. Nothing works now in the universities. And can that one hold in any climb for 1 week and government will not shiver? My government, so government that doesn't care that the entire university, public universities have been shut down. Not for Asuu strike, only lecturers. But now all the unions for more than a month, and government is not calling meeting every day. And you think, so that's why, it's not that I lost hope, I just feel that
But
this government, he has said that his government, we have a government that is deaf and dumb to the plight of Nigeria.
We have a Minister of Education and Labour. They are interested in presidency. They want to take over from...
it seems that 2023 elections have
and these are the partners, these are the principal representatives of government.
That are supposed to be running around, that are supposed to be bothered, but they are not.
All right, thank you so much. We can only hope that this issue, this quagmire, will be resolved in no distant time, and students can very quickly return to class. Thank you so much, Dr. Gbenga Bimbola, University Donor journalist, for doing justice to our focus today on the big issue.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Many thanks to you as well, Mr. Babatopo Okeowo. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Till we return next week, I am Obi Chukwemeka Oti saying bye for now.